Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're jumping into something really fascinating: the general school rules and practices over in the Netherlands. Our mission, like always, is to dig into your shared sources, all that research and notes you've gathered, and pull out the absolute key takeaways. Consider this your shortcut to getting up to speed on a pretty unique educational system. Yeah, this deep dive gives us a unique window, doesn't it? A real peek into the day-to-day, the philosophy, the sort of cultural stuff that makes Dutch education tick. We're aiming for those moments where you just go,
Yeah,
surprising facts, insights that stick, but without burying you in information.
exactly. And what's really fascinating, I think, is how that core philosophy, our sources called a freedom-loving and student-centered education approach, well, it doesn't just influence things, it actually decentralizes power in a big way. Like, unlike systems where everything's dictated from the top down, individual Dutch schools often have loads of autonomy. They can tailor teaching methods, pedagogical focus. It really reflects that freedom-loving ethos.
Yeah.
It leads to a surprising diversity you might not expect in one country. So quite fundamental.
That idea, decentralized power from a freedom-loving and student-centered base. Yeah, I can see that being a key thread here. Okay, so let's start right at the foundation. Compulsory education. And here's where it gets really interesting. How it's structured. So school is mandatory from age 5. Legally, that is. Though, lots of kids actually start at 4.
Right.
And this compulsory part, it goes on until a student hits 16. But then it doesn't just stop cold. After 16, there's this phase they call partial compulsory education that runs until they're 18. And this bit, it's designed to be really flexible. So young people can either, stay in school, maybe heading towards higher ed or vocational stuff, or they can mix work with an apprenticeship. It's definitely not forcing everyone down the same academic road.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this sort of two-tiered system, especially that partial compulsory bit, well, it says a lot about how they view youth development. It's a system that genuinely values both sticking with academics and getting integrated into work or vocational training early on. It encourages self-direction, responsibility, pretty young. It offers real flexibility instead of just a rigid, one-size-fits-all path.
Yeah.
It really seems to recognize and support different talents and futures.
That flexibility is striking, but I wonder, does a system like that ever get criticized? Maybe for letting some kids check out too early or creating different levels of opportunity? Or is it just seen as positive?
Generally, it's seen as beneficial, mostly because the pathways, even the vocational ones, are really well-defined and lead to respected careers. The aim isn't to let kids drift. It's about finding the right engagement for them.
Oh, okay.
These vocational routes are solid, highly regarded. They offer direct lines into skilled trades. So even if someone doesn't go the university route, their path isn't seen as lesser. It's viewed as an equally valuable contribution.
Right.
And that societal acceptance, well, that's crucial for making it work.
That's a really important distinction, how society views those different paths. Okay, so schools prioritize individual paths. And speaking of individuals, how do they actually make sure every student feels respected? We're talking about the ethical side, the behavior rules. Sources say mutual respect, tolerance, students, teachers, parents, it's paramount. Not just a nice idea, but central. Valuing students as individuals, respecting differences, culture, religion, gender. But how does that work in practice? Like, what are the actual mechanisms day to day?
That's a really good question, because this is where they get quite specific. They have this zero-tolerance policy against bullying. And schools aren't just encouraged, they have to implement clear, active anti-bullying policies.
Okay.
Students are properly informed about them, through lessons, campaigns, and crucially, incidents aren't ignored. They're taken very seriously. It often involves parents, maybe school psychologists, sometimes even outside help. It's quite a structured approach, really, to make sure that philosophy of respect is actually lived out, not just words.
So it's baked into how the school operates, making sure students genuinely feel safe and valued. Okay, so with those foundations clear, let's look at the daily stuff. The practicalities like dress codes and mobile phones. That's always a big one. So in the Netherlands, generally, no school uniforms, kids wear their own clothes, but there's an expectation. You dress appropriately, nothing too distracting. And phones, well, the rules are pretty clear in primary schools, basically forbidden in the classroom. Secondary schools, it varies a bit more, but most ban them during lessons. Usually okay during breaks, though.
Yeah, and what's interesting there is how those rules try to find a balance, isn't it? Freedom from uniforms that fits the student-centered idea. It trusts kids to express themselves, but also be responsible about how they look. And phones, similarly. It's about cutting down distractions when learning's happening, but still acknowledging phones are part of life. So use them during breaks. It's less about total control and more about teaching self-regulation, you know, context, maturity.
Like a mix of freedom and responsibility, getting them ready for the real world. Okay, what about attendance? And lunch. This one has some really distinct features. Attendance, first off, seems pretty strict. Absences are monitored closely. Parents have to let the school know right away if a child is sick or has another valid reason. Lots of accountability there.
Okay, let's unpack this next point, lunch, because this is often a big surprise for people. It's something that catches visitors off guard. Dutch state schools, they just don't provide lunch.
That's right.
Students bring their own packed lunch from home. Usually it's the famous ham, a sandwich, maybe some fruit, water. Lunch breaks are typically, what, 30 to 45 minutes? And get this, some schools actually let kids pop home for lunch if they live nearby. Now, some schools might have a canteen, maybe selling healthy snacks or sandwiches, but it's definitely not everywhere. Very different model.
And the bigger picture here, bringing your own lunch. It's not just about saving the school hassle. It connects to this Dutch idea of Gezelligheid.
That sort of cozy family, shared responsibility feeling. Lunch is often seen as a personal family thing. An extension of home, maybe? Not really the school's job. It teaches self-reliance, reinforces that home rhythm within the school day. It reflects this cultural expectation that families handle the day-to-day sustenance. It's quite embedded in Dutch upbringing.
That Gezelligheid link adds so much context, doesn't it? It's not just logistics, it's a cultural value being taught. Does that ever cause issues, though, for families maybe struggling with money or time?
That's definitely a fair point, and it does come up in discussions. The expectation is bringing your own, yes, but there are social safety nets. Schools usually know their student situations. Sometimes schools or local charities might step in quietly. But the basic structure, the Boterham tradition, it's incredibly strong, still widely accepted despite those potential tensions.
A real cultural fixture, then. Okay, moving on to how schools connect with the community, provide support. What about parents? How involved are they? And this school council thing, well, families get invited to school events, parent meetings, so they're kept in the loop. Communication with teachers seems pretty open, usually regular emails or maybe a school portal. But here's something really unique, embodying that student-centered idea. Every school has a Medezeggenschapsraad, the MSR School Council. And check this out, it's made up of teachers, parents, and students.
Yes.
So students actually get a direct say in school rules and policies, even quite young ones sometimes.
Yeah, well, what's fascinating about the MR is that it's not just about keeping parents informed. It's genuine shared governance, giving students a real voice in setting rules. That's a massive statement about their autonomy, their role in the school community. It teaches civic engagement, critical thinking really early on, prepares them for democracy, you could say. It really makes that student-centered philosophy concrete. They're stakeholders, not just perceivers.
Wow, that's a powerful way to empower students. Okay, what about the nuts and bolts of learning? Materials, assessments. So primary schools, books and materials are provided, takes that cost off families. And state secondary schools, books are free too. Usually handled by a book company delivered at the start of the year, collected at the end, which is quite different from university where students have to buy their own textbooks. What's the thinking behind free books for primary and secondary?
Well, providing free books for those years clearly removes a big financial hurdle, doesn't it? It suggests a really strong commitment to equitable access, making sure every student, regardless of background, has the basic tools they need. It speaks to this core belief that education should be accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
An assessment that get evaluated regularly, typically using a 1 to 10 grading scale,
Okay.
which gives quite a wide range for feedback, more nuanced than just pass-fail. And naturally, cheating is seen as seriously unethical. Big focus on integrity there.
That focus on access and integrity, yeah, super important. And speaking of access and inclusion, here's where it gets really interesting. The specific support for immigrant students. The Dutch system has very clear structures for this. They offer special language support, like NT2, that's Dutch as a second language.
Right.
And also these dedicated transition classes, the Internationale Schakkelklas, or ISK. These are specifically designed to help immigrant students bridge language and cultural gaps, integrate smoothly into the main Dutch school system. And just touching on safety and privacy quickly, student info is confidential, not shared outside without permission. Security policies are in place. Plus regular emergency drills, fire, evacuation, that kind of thing, shows a real layered approach to keeping kids safe and secure.
Absolutely. And connecting back to the bigger picture again, that structured support for immigrant kids, the NT2, the ISK, It really shows a proactive, deeply inclusive approach, making sure all students, no matter their background, get the tools and support they need to thrive in the Dutch system. It really reinforces that value of diversity and inclusion we talked about earlier, makes it real, actionable, not just a theory.
It really does sound like a comprehensive and quite thoughtful system. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what does this all mean for you listening? We've covered this fascinating mix of freedom and responsibility in Dutch schools, that really strong student-centered approach, the unique daily things like the Boterham lunch, and those governance structures like the MR that empower everyone. Definitely uncovered some aha moments about how education can look and the cultural values baked into it.
Indeed. You really see how these specific rules and practices reflect a broader Dutch way of thinking about youth development, community engagement. It's quite holistic.
Mm.
Cultivates independence, responsibility, a sense of belonging,
Mm.
really young. Positions students as active participants, self-reliant. It's a system built on trust, expects active citizenship.
It gives us a lot to think about for sure. So maybe next time you're thinking about school rules or how parents and students fit into education, reflect on this Dutch model. What parts of this freedom-loving and student-centered approach do you think could work anywhere? And which bits might be, uniquely Dutch tied to their specific culture or context, maybe harder to just lift and shift, something to mull over. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.